Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Happy Mercury going direct today. Or I don't know, does it? I know Mercury retrograde ends, but then isn't there like post shadow, pre shadow? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like things get so unnecessarily complicated and convoluted, but I do have an astrology app attached to my calendar. So oh, we're live again. We must have dropped our connection. Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to day 16. I believe we're at 16. Um, we're past the halfway point. Um, it's such a beautiful thing that we're still here and we're still going. Um, my energy today is feeling kind of like fluid. I think it's such an interesting thing when we begin to really pay attention to our natural rhythms and our natural cycles. Um, I think that has been, for me personally, probably one of the most rewarding things. Kenny, Pixie, and Fez are all here. Welcome. Happy to see you. Um, yeah, we're getting ready to clean the house like crazy because the real estate agent is coming in the next couple of days to figure out how they're gonna, what my sister and brother-in-law need to do to get their house on the market. Um, but whatever, I that's not right now. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Thank you. Yeah, it's not my thing, right? I think that's part of what I have to remind myself of is like those old caretaking and codependency patterns, which were like a second language in my family. And reminding myself over and over, like, it is not my responsibility to pick up other people's problems, their frustration, their anxiety, their stress, whatever. Certainly I can support and help in whatever way I can, but that I don't have to pick up that energy and make it mine, right? We were talking the other day about the difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy, right? I can sit here and watch and observe and acknowledge the experience you're having, and I can also not go into that energetic space. Sympathy, from my perspective, is okay, I see your pain and I'm going to join you there. Um, so, just going with the flow and trusting the energy, my energy, where it wants to go, where it wants to take me, what's here for me today. And when it's mellow and easy and relaxed, I'll be honest, there is a part of me that, not so much anymore, but definitely for a long time, as I began to reclaim my authority and begin to reclaim my clarity and my sense of self and purpose, I would realize that there was part of me, yeah, hashtag deep breathing. There was part of me that really only understood how to operate within stress and anxiety. There's part of me that just really only understood survival. This is part of like a PTSD thing. And I'm not going to go into my own history, but suffice it to say, it makes sense having grown up in an experience and an environment where I was kind of a target all of the time. Not kind of, I was a target all of the time. That creates a state of being within the self where hypervigilance and always being turned on and always being activated is just sort of a state of being. And that has been one of the major things that I've dismantled in myself over the course of the past decade, something that I have been diligent about. And it still shows up from time to time. But what is fascinating is to see, oh, there are parts of me that only really knows how to feel at home when there's anxiety, stress, something to run from, something to fight against, something to escape, so just the realization that, oh, okay, there are parts of me that thrive in discord and they actually kind of need discord in order to be functional, in order to operate, right? It's like a gadget in your kitchen that only has one job. It's a single tasker and you only use it, once a year or once every few months or whatever. It's kind of the same thing. Like what I realized, and this was last summer, when I was in the middle of my garden in the midst of, summer in Kansas in the garden, and then I had the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and it was just like so many things. And there was a day when I was cleaning out the garden and just trying to make sense of it. It was getting towards the end of the growing season, and I would start to uproot some of the dead plants. And I just had this moment of realization of like, oh, okay, so this is chaos, right? This is the form that I had created and the organization that had been created through the intention of this garden. And the plants had reached their peak. Some of them, they had given their all. I had given them everything I could, and they had given their all, and they were beginning to decline, right? I see this, right? These natural rhythms of cycles of birth and decay, birth and decay. We can talk about entropy, right? And how most systems naturally move towards entropy. We move towards chaos and disorder. I mean, let's use the physical body as an example, not to be kind of morbid about it, but the minute that we're born, we begin our process of moving towards the death experience. Now, that's, I know, a very specific way of looking at it, but for the sake of this conversation, things that are formed and things that are created are eventually going to fall apart and are going to disintegrate and descend into chaos, so that then they can be broken down into their fundamental aspects and then reborn and reallocated into a new form, a new experience, etc. So it was this moment of realization of watching the garden and seeing how the beauty of this natural intelligence that's present in all things, and life wants to be lived. And if we give it the correct circumstances, or if we just get out of the way, life will be lived. Life knows how to live. That's why we're here. But it was just a moment of realization of like, oh, chaos is a necessary part of order. And it was just a moment of realization of like, oh, there are parts of me that want chaos, that thrive on chaos. There are parts of me that are actively seeking these altered states of reality. And then I started to think about when I was a little kid. And one of my favorite things to do was just spin and spin and spin and spin and spin and spin. When you twirl in a circle and then you try to walk and you're all wobbly and everything's tilting and you kind of fall down and you're laughing and it's hilarious. And then I started to think about, all the recreational drugs that I consumed in my, 20s and 30s and 40s. And I think there's something to the fact that we're naturally seeking these altered states. We naturally are seeking a different version of reality, because I think somewhere inside we know that it's an infinite perspective, that, we have an opportunity to see it through a different perspective infinitely. So I think, I start to think about that, right? Chaos and order, and light and dark, and masculine and feminine, and beginning and ending, and these pairs that are like two sides of the same coin, and how we need them, right? I've been talking a lot about this, the light and the shadow, and how we need both, and we hold both, and we are both. And we need the growth. We need spring. And we need summer, and we need fall, and we need winter, right? We need the dormancy. We need the times of eruption, and we need the times of collapse. And so my point here is, when we begin to tap back into our natural energies and our natural cycles and rhythms, and the natural movements really within the universe that exists within us, we see some days it's my chaos that wants to be expressed or acknowledged. Some days, like today, it's just super low key and super chill, and just like this slow river that's, just gently kind of flowing. And then some days it feels like it's funneled really, really tight, and it's pointed in a singular direction, and it's like 5,000 gallons of water just moving through one little tiny pinhole. And so it feels like this massive, massive rush. Some days it's a little bit of everything. But I think that one of the things that I have found to be the most valuable in my experience is to trust my natural energy, trust the rhythm and the cycle. I think that was one of the things that I often had such a hard time when I was working for other people, was the energy fluctuations. There would be days when it was like no brainer, easy peasy, open my eyes, get up, ready to go, one and done, out the door, got my coffee worked out. It's just a day where I'm feeling like $1 million and I'm showing up and I'm doing my thing. And then there's other days where for seemingly no reason, I'm like, oh my God, this is the last place I want to be. And that was one of the hardest things for me, was to try to figure out, well, how do I muster passion or caring or commitment to something that, when I just don't give a shit about it? So my point here, I guess, I don't really know if I have a point today. Maybe it's the part of me that doesn't make sense. Maybe it's the non-linear, illogical part of me that's in charge today, or that's, really speaking today. But I think that it's important to allow ourselves, if we can't honor what our energy and body is asking for, right? Because some days maybe the body or the energy is saying, can we just have a day where we stay in our sweats and stay in bed? And you might be saying, that's a lovely idea, but I have a job to go to. I have kids to take care of or feed or whatever. I have, so I think, there are going to be times when we have to say yes to things that we'd really rather not do, or that, 90% of us is saying, no, I don't want to do this, but it's a 10% of our will, and I got to just kind of pick myself up and make myself do it. So there are going to be those times. But I think that it's a really beautiful thing when we finally arrive in a place where we can really truly honor what's happening within our systems. And even more fantastic when we can actually follow through with that information, with that guidance. Because there are going to be days, again, when you're like, well, I would love to just do nothing, but I've committed myself. And that's another thing, some days you just don't know, right? Isn't that the joke? Like, oh, yeah, I was really excited when I made those plans, but by the time they arrived, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I used to be the king of ghosting. Oh my God. I would think of I had a million reasons why I couldn't do something, or why I suddenly changed my mind, or why suddenly plans weren't going to work out. And then I would just do, um, the ghost, right? I'd be like, okay, if I couldn't get out of it, I would go to the party, or I would go out, or I would do the thing, and then I would just disappear. I would give them a good, like, I'll have a couple beers, be like, oh, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and then I would just disappear, like leave. And that sort of became the thing where I would just, disappear. So I think that, as we proceed through our experience, finding places where we can honor what's really going on with us. And if we can't follow that guidance or that invitation, to acknowledge that, okay, this is what I really want to do, or this is where I'm being called. And right now, I just, I'm not able to do that. That's okay. I think it's just allowing ourselves to really honor where we are. And if we don't know where we are, giving ourselves space and quiet to figure that out. This morning, I'm still sitting with, this realization of that my sister and brother-in-law are going to be selling their house soon. And that means I'm going to be moving again soon. And so just watching this information as it continues to kind of reverberate within me, and like sitting with the fears or the questions or the doubts that, are present, and just watching it. And this morning again, there was that the part of me that's like, oh my God, okay, so I'm just going to watch it before I get on my phone, before I turn on my computer, before I do anything else that connects me to any experience or person or whatever outside of my internal life, just giving myself that time. And I think that that's really what can be so crucial and make the biggest difference in how our day goes, or the day that the mindset that we can choose for our day, is to give ourselves that time, is to give ourselves that space, and to give ourselves that silence. Because in this life where we are so connected all of the time, and there's probably almost always something needing something. Why didn't you text me back? Why didn't you email me back? Did you get a thing to look? Did you look at that thing? Did you figure it out? Giving yourself space simply to be with yourself. Giving yourself space to just tend to yourself for a few minutes, even if you can only give yourself like 3 minutes, 5 minutes of sitting silently with your eyes closed and just breathing. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that can make the difference in how the day goes, because that is something that we can always choose. And again, even if it is like, "Oh god, why did I say I would do this today?" Well, I can just accept and honor, okay, I said I would do it. I changed my mind, but there's no backing out now or whatever. This is part of this, I think, is also if we look at things like human design or the gene keys, these systems of information that have really, really deep and vast you know, information and knowledge within them that can help sort of guide us or help perhaps clue us into some of our blind spots or perhaps some of our operating systems or modes of navigating through the world that perhaps are a little bit more by default. And that was, one of the things as I've been diving into human design as a manifesting generator, is this idea that, manifesting generators need to have a lot of irons in the fire to feel really fulfilled and satisfied. And manifesting generators, it's really, like I've always, it's so funny because my whole life I've said, if it's not a hell yes, it's a fuck no. Like that has been one of the guiding principles that I use to make decisions in my life, is like, if it's not at least 51% of me going, yes, 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 then I'm not going to do it. And oftentimes finding when I would say yes to things that I didn't really want to do, and then I would end up going, oh, this sucked. And I knew it would suck because my body was telling me, no, we don't really want to do this, etc. And part of the thing with the manifesting generator is to understand that sometimes something that you don't necessarily want to do actually serves a bigger state of being or a bigger purpose or a bigger choice. The example that I often use is doing the dishes in the sink. I don't love to do dishes. I just love having a clean house. I love having a clean home. So for me, um, it's about the moment of, okay, what do I really want here? What I really want is a clean kitchen. And then the little voice is like, well, those aren't your dishes. Why should you be cleaning up other people's messes? That's not fair. I'm like, no, it's not about fair. It's not about right or wrong. It's about, I love the feeling of being in a clean kitchen. I have an opportunity to create the feeling of being in a clean kitchen for myself. And so I can say hell yes to doing all the dishes so that I get a clean kitchen. My point here is there's often more than one way to get to a desired result. There's often more than one way that we can arrive. I use this quote all the time, right? You can learn to bake a cake in a 5-star kitchen, or you can learn to bake a cake in the gutter. It's up to you. Either way, you're going to learn how to bake a cake. That comes from Paul Selig's guides. But really, it is a choice. It is a choice. So become aware, become curious, become decisive and inquisitive about, before you're off and running and your day's half over and you go, wait a minute, did I even give myself 5 minutes just to breathe and connect? It's a really, really powerful thing. And it can be a really, really liberating and healing thing just to simply check in with yourself. And I'm actually going to give you a brief exercise. This is what I call morning meetings. And this was inspired by all of my years in retail. And when I used to work at a department store, yeah, I think so too, mother of dogs. Like, some, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this, like the walking meditation and the tea meditation and washing the dishes meditation. Like meditation is just really a state where all of you is focused in a singular point. So the idea of morning meetings was inspired by my time in retail, and I used to work in department stores. And so the department store would have the morning meeting. So the manager of the shoe department and the manager of the clothing department and the manager of the cosmetics department or whatever, all the managers would meet and they would get all the information, and then they would go down to their teams and tell all of their teams. So I started to take this approach and go, okay, there are different departments within me. There's my mental self, my emotional self, my physical self, my energetic self. Like those were the 4 that I could, really directly connect with. So then I started thinking like, okay, if I am the store manager, right? If I'm the manager in charge of all the other managers, I have department managers. So my emotional self, my physical self, my mental self, my energetic self. And I would get my pen and paper and I would sit every morning and I would write down on a piece of paper mental self. And then I would connect with my mental self. Okay, mental self, what do you need for your department for you to thrive today, to be successful today, to meet your goals today. And I really just took the same exact model that I got from retail. So then I go through the mental self and it would be like, oh, I can't stop thinking about that thing. Can we process that? Or I need to work through some of the information. Can we do a journaling session or whatever? Okay, cool. Then the energetic self. Oh my God, you need, whatever the energetic self need. Can we please clear ourselves of that energy? Can we please stop watching, movies that are scary or violent? It's freaking my energy out. Okay, cool. Then the emotional self. I'm still feeling worked up about that thing that happened last week. I need to have a cry or a purge. So giving yourself the information that you need to manage yourself, I think is so key. And I think one of the ways we can access this information, there is the sort of what we call the scenic route, right? The long way, which is when you look around and see, like, oh, things in my life aren't working right now. Things suck. I'm broke. I'm in pain. I'm unhappy. Okay, that's a good sign that maybe you should stop and check in. But you don't have to wait until things fall apart to get the information that parts of you are heading for chaos or collapse or, you know, pain or anger or frustration or whatever. So you check in. Okay, what do you need? I don't know. I'm feeling a little freaked out. Okay, so let's sit with that part that's feeling freaked out. So giving yourself the gift of checking in with yourself. And I did this every single morning, and it took like maybe half hour, 45 minutes, depending on how much was active within me. But I made a point to dedicate and devote myself to giving this to myself. And it's fascinating what you can uncover. It's fascinating. And you can do it either through just meditation, like the way that you could meditate. If you're a really visual person and you can visualize in your mind's eye, then you can just imagine how I would always do it is just envision, okay, I'm sitting at a table. Across from me is an empty chair at the table. And then I would invite, like, okay, my physical manager. Okay, now the mental manager. Okay, now the emotional manager. And I would just imagine this consciousness sitting across from me and we would dialogue. You can also do it through journaling. Like I would sit and I'd be like, dear mental manager, what's going on today? Blah, 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 blah. Then I would sit down and write a response back from that mental perspective. So there's a million different ways you can do it. You can do it just channeling yourself. That's really how I have found the most effective one to do. Like just sit down, center and ground myself, and then tap into my mental, body, the mental awareness. Like, okay, mental self, and then just talk to myself from that mental perspective as the mental self, sharing with myself. And yeah, it can sometimes start to feel a little bit crazy making as you're sitting here talking to yourself, but it's really about becoming conscious and deliberate. It's really about pulling away those veils of unconscious autopilot living where we just go back to the clarity of like, oh, okay, I'm consciously aware of what's happening within me. And maybe I still have to do things that I'm not necessarily excited about doing or wish I didn't have to do. But if I am standing there and all of me is saying, okay, we've committed to doing this. We don't want to do it, but we're going to do it because we're going to honor our word. And so here we are. So, what have I learned about me now that I'm in this 30-day share, Brian? That's a great question. I don't think I've learned anything definitive. I think I've just been reminded of things that I already knew. What I've been reminded of is that I am my medicine, right? I think, again, talking about this bit that has felt like I have to perform, that I have to earn, that I have to prove, and seeing that I don't have to earn or perform or prove, that I have everything I need and that my presence sometimes is medicine enough. So that's one thing I've been reminded of. One thing I've been reminded of is that it really is about following my highest excitement and the things that light me up, excite me, inspire me. That really is the key. And here's how I know it is the key. And y'all can follow me with this little brief exercise if you want to, right? Close your eyes for me for a second. We're just going to do a quick little exercise. So close your eyes and just take a couple breaths. Find yourself in your center, right? I call this the inner landscape, and then the inner temple within your inner landscape. And your inner temple is where that throne of your authority resides. So find that central point and sit yourself down in that throne. If you don't know what that is, just tell yourself, I'm in the throne. Just decide that you're there. And just take a couple breaths. And as you're feeling yourself settling in, as you're feeling that connection deepen, we're just going to play a little game. We're going to call this the ideal life. And as specific as you can be, just visualize, okay, it's my ideal life. My eyes are closed. I'm waking up in my bed, in my ideal life, in my ideal reality, which is really just my preferred reality. What do I really want? But I'm still here with my eyes closed in my bed. So my eyes are closed, but I'm going to start tuning into the environment. Now, again, this is your ideal world. So this can be or look like whatever you want. And it doesn't have to, in any way, shape, or form, be connected to your current reality, your past reality, or a version that is realistic. This is for you to begin to dream and imagine beyond. Beautiful. So now just continue with that thread. Okay, I'm in my bed, but my eyes are still closed. What do I feel? What do I sense? What is the vibe and the flavor in the room? What is going on within my body? Right? Okay, so keeping your physical eyes closed, but now visualizing in your mental projection that you're opening your eyes and you're looking around the room. Maybe you hear the birds outside, maybe you hear the ocean, maybe you hear the wind in the trees, maybe you hear your neighbors, whatever your ideal preferred life would be. And then you get out of that bed, and how do you feel in your body? Is it flexible and fluid and strong and healthy? What would you prefer it to be? What ideally would light you up? You're moving up from the bed, you're beginning to move through the room. Now, what's on your agenda for the morning? Are you going to have coffee? Are you going to meditate? Are you going to journal? Do you have to get up and get in the shower right away because you have a job to go to? Again, this is your dream. Now begin to pay attention. Wow, what are the words that you would use to describe your life or your day? Oh, it's easy, it's peaceful, it's lush, it's opulent, it's abundant, it's safe, it's quiet, it's vibrant, it's thriving, it's exciting. Whatever the words are, you get to paint this picture. You get to paint this picture. It's your ideal life. Now imagine that you're looking at your calendar for the day. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? What are the things that you've committed to? Is it creating content? Is it writing something? Is it lunch with a friend? Is it working with clients? Is it your own business? Are you working for someone else? Again, this is your reality. You get to create it. So imagining now that your day is going by and you're doing the things that you want to do and you're doing all the things that you've chosen to do that light you up, that fulfill you, that feed you. And now you're moving through the day and you're arriving towards the end of the day, feeling that sense of fulfillment and satisfaction, feeling that sense of ease and flow. Now you're returning to that bed with a day behind you that was satisfying and fulfilling and rewarding. So now you can just kind of keep breathing and gently open your eyes whenever you're feeling ready. And I'm going to ask you some questions. And these are going to sound silly, but they're not a trick question. In that version, that vision of your dream reality, where were you stressing out about money? Where were you fighting with people online on social media that you've never met? Where are you freaking the fuck out about what's happening over on the other side of the world that you have absolutely no control over? When were you crying and upset and worried and traumatized and connected to that thing that happened when you were 7 years old that's still destroying you? That's how I know, Brian. Long answer to your very short question. What I have learned is I am always telling myself what is on the horizon based upon the direction that I'm moving according to what's happening in my body. There is nowhere in my dream reality, my preferred vision of life, where I am stressed or anxious or worried about anything. So, why the hell am I going to try to feed and subsist on a diet of fear and anxiety, knowing that that is never going to bring me to the reality I prefer, right? Remember, we live in a coherent, creative, generative reality. You are sticky to what you are. whether it's conscious or unconscious. You are sticky to what you are. So if you don't want to be anxious, stressed out, worried, sick, annoyed, irritated, then stop you choosing those states of being. Now, here's the thing. In the beginning, it's going to take some work. In the beginning, it's like potty training the puppy. You're like, oh my God, when is this fucking puppy ever going to realize that it doesn't pee on the floor? When is it? And you just know it's going to take as long as it takes. And you lovingly and you consistently remind that puppy over and over, no, we go over here. 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 And one day that puppy just magically gets it. And you want to fucking cry and you're so excited. You love that little puppy and you pick it up and you kiss it all over and you want to put it in your mouth because it's so cute and you love it so much. It's the same thing with you. Stay devoted. I see the word discipline, Pixie, and I'm going to offer devotion. I think discipline is somebody else's ideas of how I should be. Devotion is what is burning in my heart. What is am I dying to pour myself into? And if you say, I want to be free, then you show up every day and you remind yourself of how to liberate yourself. You already know how to do the things you want to do. You already know how to be the state that you want to be because you already are that. You just have to allow yourself. You just have to trust yourself. You just have to give yourself permission. Mother of dogs, I think grief, grief is a big topic. But I think in a nutshell, grief has zero interest in our agenda. And what I mean by that is grief is a visitor. Grief is a visitor, an emissary sent from the divine. Grief is a manifestation of the depth of our feeling, the depth of our capacity to love and to nurture and to care. And grief is an opportunity to acknowledge just how deeply we can feel. And grief has no interest in whether or not it's convenient or easy or comfortable. I think grief is something that we surrender to. I think grief is something we allow, knowing that once grief sees that we are now capable to handle it on our own, grief will then depart. Grief is a teacher, and it's not one that most of us welcome, but it is still a divine gift. I think grief is something we dance with. I think grief is something we allow. I think grief is something that we create a relationship with. Some days grief is going to be a penny in your pocket, and other days grief is going to be 5,000 pounds on your back. Some days grief is going to be the thing sitting on your chest and you can't even get out of bed. But it is here to teach you something about yourself. And I think that grief reminds us of how bittersweet this life can be because we know that we never lose anyone or anything. They're just transitioning into another state, right? They've just left the room and they're in another room now. But that doesn't make it easier necessarily. That doesn't make it hurt less necessarily. That doesn't even make the pain anything other than just painful. But it's one of the hardest lessons I think we have to learn as humans is that we own nobody or no thing. Nobody or no thing belongs to us. We belong to ourselves. We belong to spirit. And we are blessed with the temporary experience of getting to walk through life together for a time. And yes, we will know each other again on the other side, but the physical experience is limited. The physical experience is finite. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we never know when the ending is. So I think it is giving yourself the permission to have your own experience with grief, giving yourself permission to do it in the way that makes sense for you, giving yourself permission to understand that people may have a lot of opinions and a lot of ideas of how you should deal with it. And it's up to you how much value you place on those suggestions and those opinions. But ultimately, grief is just a relationship with yourself and the parts of you that now are saying, what now? What do I do now? Where do I go now? And it's just knowing that you are loved and you are supported and that it will pass. It will pass. And my heart goes out to you because I know it's not easy. It's not easy. Even though we know and we can write it down. Yes, all things are temporary. This body is mortal. This body will collapse someday. All things end in this physical realm. So we can know that, but to live that is something different. And so take your time, take it slow, offer compassion to yourself first and foremost, and just trust that it'll proceed. It'll proceed. The path will continue forward. It won't always be where you are. But while you're where you are, give yourself permission to inhabit it fully. You know, a physical experience requires a physical reality requires a physical experience. So the beauty and the power of our emotions is what they can transform as we allow them to move through our system. They are alchemy. So when we let ourselves acknowledge it, feel it, and then let it move up the chain so that it can fully release, that releases a little bit of pressure and then a little bit more and a little bit more, and on it goes. I think that's all I have today. I have a call coming up in about 20 minutes, so I'm going to wrap this up and get ready for that. But thank you, everybody, for showing up today. It was really, really lovely. Tomorrow we'll be here, same time, same YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe. All the information is below in the what is that description box. If you want to donate, if you want to book a session, sign up for my newsletter, find me on Instagram, buy my book, all sorts of things for you there. Love you, love you, love you. Have a fabulous day, and I will see you tomorrow for day 17. Wow. Bye, everybody.